Hello everyone, welcome back. Let's learn about the line by line explanation of Hornbill, poem number 1, a photograph by Shirley Toulson. Poet's introduction. Shirley Toulson had a lifespan from 1924 to 2014. She was an innovative writer about Britain's walks, ancient tracks, and traditions. She wrote books on the social history of the countryside since 1974. She had authored several popular books like The Drovers' Roads of Wales and The Drovers' Roads of South Wales. Let's have a quick look at the poem's introduction. The poet here recalls her mother and her memories while looking at a childhood photograph of her mother. The poem focuses on the theme of transience of human life, that is, the human life is mortal, it is transitory. Apart from this, it also highlights the themes of death and mysteries associated with life and death. Similarly, the poem also deals with the theme of eternality of nature. The complete poem, a photograph. The cardboard shows me how it was when the two girl cousins went paddling, each one holding one of my mother's hands, and she, the big girl, some 12 years or so. All three stood still to smile through their hair at the uncle with the camera, a sweet face, my mother's, that was before I was born, and the sea, which appears to have changed less, washed their terribly transient feet. Some 20-30 years later, she'd laugh at the snapshot. See, Betty and Dolly, she'd say, and look how they dressed us for the beach. The sea holiday was her past, mine is her laughter, both wry with the labored ease of loss. Now she's been dead nearly as many years as that girl lived. And of this circumstance, there is nothing to say at all. It's silence, silences. Let's move on to stanza-wise, line-by-line explanation. The cardboard shows me how it was when the two girl cousins went paddling, each one holding one of my mother's hands, and she, the big girl, some 12 years or so. An old photograph of the poet's mother, which was pasted on cardboard, makes the poet recall the old memories of her mother's childhood. The photograph is a depiction of her mother's enjoyable moments at a sea beach with her two cousins who were younger to her. They were walking in shallow water as they were paddling. They were walking in shallow water with bare feet near the beach. The mother was standing in the middle and holding hands of her two cousins who were also standing on each side. The poet's mother was 12 years old then, and the photograph shows that the photograph was very old, but the poet has kept it very carefully as it reminded her of her mother's sweet memories, especially of her childhood. The photograph also indicates how enjoyable her mother's childhood was. Stanza 2. All three stood still to smile through their hair at the uncle with the camera, a sweet face, my mother's, that was before I was born, and the sea, which appears to have changeless, washed their terribly transient feet. Now, here the photograph shows that all three girls, the poet's mother and her two cousins, stood still and smiled at the camera when their uncle clicked their photograph at the sea beach. As the weather was windy at that time, their hair was flying over their smiling faces. The expression on the faces of the poet's mother and her cousins was that of happiness and enjoyment as they smiled through their hairs. The mother was looking very pretty at that time, and the photograph was taken a long time ago. According to the poet, everything has changed since then. Her mother grew up. Now she was dead. And the poet was reviving her memories. The only thing that has remained unchanged is the sea, the same sea to which they went for their holiday. The sea which was washing the feet of all three girls remains unchanged. The mention of the word transient here indicates the ever-changing lives of human beings, and this is the theme of the poem, that ever-changing lives of human beings as well as the shortness of their stay on this world. In contrast to the eternality of nature remains eternal. Similarly, the girls' life changed drastically with the passage of time during this period, but the sea has not changed. So we see the stanza beautifully explains the transient nature of human being. Let's move on to stanza third now. Some 20-30 years later, she would laugh at the snapshot. See, Betty and Dolly, she would say, and look how they dressed us for the beach. The sea holiday was her past. Mine is her laughter, both wry with the labored ease of loss. So here, even 20-30 years later, the mother would look at the photograph and laugh nostalgically, remembering the happy memories of her past. Mother would look at the photograph and comment on the dresses worn by the cousins, Dolly, Betty, and herself. She would tell the poet that see how their parents had dressed them in a colorful and in a special manner for the sea holiday. Sea holiday was her mother's past, and her mother's laughter has become a thing of the past for the poet, as her mother was now dead. So the poet still remembers how her mother would laugh at the photograph, remembering the sea holiday with a kind of fondness as well as a sense of loss, because that time would never come back. In the same way, poets' feelings, and the poet also feels nostalgic thinking about her mother and her laughter, which has become a thing of the past. So we see here the words labored and ease are opposite to each other, but both the words describe the same entity, that is loss. Now the last stanza. Now she has been dead nearly as many years as that girl lived, and of this circumstance there is nothing to say at all. Its silence silences. Now the poet recalls that it is nearly 12 years since her mother died. The poet is consumed with grief, but is left with no words to express her loss and pain. The poet is totally absorbed in memories of her dead mother. The painful silence of this situation leaves the poet speechless. The poet can feel the grief but is unable to express it through words. The silence caused by death makes the atmosphere gloomy, silent, where no one is able to utter words. So with this, we come to the end of the explanation part. This is the glossary section. And that's all for this session.